You're all very welcome to the small practice support session. And today I'm discussing with Rory O'Boyle the new PPC from the Education Standards Manager. And I'm also joined by Ian Ryan from the Education Department also. So you're all very welcome here today. We'll take questions on the chat, and over to you, Rory.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Justin and Ian. Lovely to see you online as well, actually, and thanks so much for joining us. So my presentation today is what I really want to focus and connect with is just some of the main aspects of the new professional practice course. And I suppose as regards to the system of training in this jurisdiction, I think in many ways the new professional practice course represents the most significant change in a generation. There are a number of ways of considering those changes. Some of them are very practical, focusing on the logistics of the course, and others are content-driven, a refocusing on content as well of the professional practice course training. So different bits of those changes speak more profoundly to each recipient, but hopefully we can do justice to all of them and give some voice to those changes. The first thing I want to sort of connect with is the fact that the new PPC itself sits within a suite of changes with regards to training in this jurisdiction that found voice in the Peer-to Commission. And I think it's very hard to talk about the new PPC without maybe looking at those overall suite of changes and things that we have already introduced, even before we get to those fundamental changes of the new PPC. Just worthwhile just kind of reflecting on those changes over the last number of years since introduction of the Peer-to Commission. We introduced fundamental changes to the system of the FE1s, the FE1 examinations. Trainees can now start those, or future trainees can start those at the FE1s while still in college. After the first year of their time in college, they can start undertaking the FE1s. So that in itself is a substantial change. Speaking possibly even more profoundly to this group is the proposal 11 of the Peer-to Commission, which provided that it liberalized the in-office training requirement, and previously trainees were required to achieve training from discrete blocks of training, but now the new requirement is that they require training in 3 discrete areas of practice, and that in itself is very helpful potentially for smaller firms that are more focused on a particular areas of practice. Makes it more likely and more achievable that they can fully take on a trainee and provide them with the training required. So that in itself is a really fundamental change. Also, proposal 12 of the Peer-to Commission spoke of different models of training contracts, and that provided the possibility that trainees could be shared between firms if it was felt that a firm in itself could not take on a trainee in their own right, that the potential that those trainees could be shared between firms. Really fundamental change led by my colleague here on the call, Ian Ryan, and just really interested in, maybe if it's okay at this stage, Ian, I might just invite you in maybe to speak to both those potential changes and their impact potentially for smaller to medium-sized practices.
Okay, just check that you can hear me there, Rory. Yeah, great. Okay, so we talked about the first one. I suppose proposal 11, the discrete training blocks, I mean, that was a major change. Moreover, a lot of small practices are not involved in the full range of general practice anymore. And we have a number of kind of practitioners specializing in kind of boutique areas of law. So, I mean, we'd know maybe Keane O'Carroll from the 6-1Us doing the medical negligence cases. That would be a prime example of a boutique firm, I suppose, small practice down the country. So before, firms like Keen's would have taken on trainees, but they would have to arrange secondments in order that trainees could obtain the 4 required blocks of experience under the old training regime. Whereas nowadays, all that is required is that the firm can provide training in 3 discrete areas of law, and they can be any 3 areas. So the Law Society are no longer dictating what those areas of law must be. So that has made a massive difference to a lot of small firms. And indeed, even within house law departments, we're seeing more training contracts coming on board every year as a result of that change. So no longer do you have to provide training, for instance, in, say, conveyancing or probate law. What I would say under the indenture deed is it's 3 discrete areas of law to include contentious and non-contentious matters. So just watch out for that. So to include contentious and non-contentious matters. So that's the training blocks. The different models of training contracts then, I suppose, since the 1st of January 2020, there's the ability for 2 firms to share a trainee. So if it was 2 small practices, you know, they might have a trainee working for one practice Mondays and Tuesdays every week, and maybe a different practice Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday every week. The trainee will still have one training solicitor per se, who's responsible for the Law Society documents, including the indenture deed. And it'll just be a matter of setting out in a letter really what the working proposal is regarding the working hours for the trainee. So what days and times are to be based in one practice and what days and times are to be based in the other practice. So again, I mean, that could be really valuable for a small firm who's worried about the cost of taking on a trainee. If they could share the cost, it might enable, I suppose, 2 firms who might never have had a trainee before to go ahead and take on a trainee. So yeah, that's all I'll say for now, and I'll answer any questions later on in Rory's talk. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Ian. That's hugely helpful. Ian needs in both those aspects. So great to hear from about that from Ian actually. And then another really fundamental change, and I know I worked with Ian on this as well, was the introduction of the PPC hybrid under the proposal 23. That's the part-time version of the PPC hybrid. And again, that part-time version has spoken very much to the needs of firms outside of Dublin, and also indeed smaller practices as well, because the trainee can, to a large extent, stay in the office and stay in their location during the delivery of the professional practice course. That was under proposal 23. So that's the backdrop of real fundamental changes that have been introduced over the course of the last 3 to 4 years. That brings us now to the focus of this presentation, and that is the new PPC, and that finds its voice under proposal 21 of the Peer Commission. So these changes apply to all future versions of the PPC. These changes apply to both the full-time version of the PPC and also the part-time version that we call that the PPC hybrid. So this is a structural change to the professional practice course that will apply to all versions of the PPC going forward. And fundamentally, what it does is it fuses what we have come to know as the PPC1 and the PPC2 into one single training event, the professional practice course that will run roughly for the duration in the full-time version of the new PPC for the course of an academic year. So it has done away with what we've known as the sandwich model of training. You see that the PPC1, then in-office training, and then PPC2 taking place, known as the sandwich model, and fuse the PPC1 and the PPC2 into a single training event. So that's a fundamental change, and has got with specific logistical advantages for trainees and firms as well, because ultimately it will mean firms will not have to manage the taking in of trainees and then the trainees leaving again to attend the professional practice course part 2. finding its voice in proposal 21 of the Peer to Commission. So with regards to the new PPC, just I want to spend some time reflecting on what those changes are, how we intend to implement those changes, and when as well, the timeline for the implementing of those changes. Let's reflect on the existing model of training and the objectives, the stated objectives of the existing model of training. The stated objective, and this is found, you'll see this referenced in the Maharg report. The objective is to prepare solicitors for private practice and to ensure that the newly qualified solicitors understand the law underlying the more common areas of practice, and it is consciously designed on an experiential learning by doing model, drawing on the professional legal training courses that were in operation in Australia at the time. That model, that underlying purpose and that underlying means of delivery with regards to the professional practice course is maintained in the new PPC. So that's still very much the focus of the new PPC. However, the changes that we're focusing on, we've already mentioned them, fundamental change as regards to logistics, the fusing of the PPC1 and the PPC2 into a single training event. But the Peer to Commission speaks of more than mere logistics. It speaks of content as well. It speaks of a renewed focus on skills for 2020 and beyond. For example, focusing on leadership skills, project management, ADR as well. A renewed focus on those type of skills. Also, from a very practical perspective, criminal litigation and employment law no longer will be part of the core curriculum, but will be given full voice in advanced electives as well. So that's a fundamental change as well. So these were the guidelines provided by the Peer to Commission with regards to content. Then the Education Committee in September of last year very helpfully provided further detail as regards to the content of the new PPC, and I've laid it out now in sort of discrete courses, and you will see that renewed focus on skills, legal skills, which we would have expected to see, but also new general skills given renewed focus in the new PPC, from project management, critical thinking, leadership skills, collaboration, finance and problem solving. Also within the new PPC, there will be that focus on professional responsibility with enhanced coverage of legal ethics, dispute resolution, business law, land law, probate, and then other one-semester courses, including family law and taxation, and other courses, including the legal practice Irish course as well. That is the content. That is the new content of the new PPC, reflecting some of the core elements of the previous PPC, but given new voice within the new setting. That core element of the new PPC will run from September to end April time. Exams will then take place in end April time for trainees. That's the full-time version of the new PPC. And after that, then trainees will be required to complete 4 advanced electives. Those advanced electives will be provided either by the Law Society, or the Law Society will authorize external providers, such as law firms, to provide advanced electives, or we will do them in collaboration with other institutions. The Law Society's advanced electives will run from will run through May and June, and if trainees elect to complete those advanced electives with the Law Society between May and June, then the entire training element of the entire sort of the educational element of the training will be completed, and by July time, and trainees will return to the office and start July. However, that said, trainees will have the entire 24 months of the training contract to complete the advanced electives. So if they choose not to complete them with the Law Society, they can complete them at a time otherwise during the 24 months training contract, and they will be entitled or be able to return to the office earlier under the full-time version of the new PPC if advanced electives are not being completed in the May and June time. The Peer Commission also speaks of pedagogical concerns as well. It focuses on, it requires a renewed focus on problem-based learning and transactional learning, and problem-based learning and transactional learning being embedded in the current course redesign here in the Law Society as well, leaving trainees, the desire being leaving trainees with a greater set of transferable skills once they're back in the office as well. The new Fused PPC brochure is available, and and setting out some more of the detail with regards to the logistics of the new PPC. And if it has not been distributed already, of course, very, very happy to make that available, Justin, more generally, and can be emailed to anybody on this call, and indeed more generally as well. It sets out the type of logistics and type of structural changes that I've just described with regards to the new PPC, and delighted to make that available to participants as well. I know that's a lot of information. I know there's a lot of changes. People may need some time to digest and reflect on those changes. But if there are any questions at this point, they'd be most welcome, and just give us as a group maybe an opportunity to think about some of those changes together.
Sure. Thank you very much, Rory, for a very in-depth presentation. So just a quick question for you. Is this the only way that I can get trained as a trainee going forward post-September 2022, this new PPC model?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you so much, Justin. And like all great questions, I'm going to say yes and no. Just to be very, very clear, this new model that I have just described applies to the full-time version of the PPC starting in September. What is the core of that new model? It's the fusing of the PPC1 and the PPC2 into a single training event, okay? So what I'm at pains to say is that new model applies to the standard version of the PPC. We call the full-time for summary, and also to the PPC hybrid, which will start with it. But the new version of the PPC hybrid, which is the part-time version, will come in place in January 2023. But it is still very much based on that model. What is that model? It's the fusing of the PPC1 and the PPC2 into a single training event. So the new model applies to the full-time version and the part-time version.
Thank you. And just a question around the PERT report, or which seems to have informed a lot of substantial changes in this. Do you want to just remind us a little bit about what that was and how that came about?
That's wonderful. Thanks so much, actually, and thanks for bringing that to the fore. The Peer Commission really is the most recent and a most substantial review of training and education in this jurisdiction. I've got a copy of it on my desk. I'm sure Ian probably does as well. It lists out over 20 proposals and proposed changes, and the new PPC has its roots within that commission, within that report, as do all the changes that I've just described. Ian, I don't know if you want to come in there and maybe say anything more about the Peer Commission, or?
I suppose, the Peer Commission, I suppose, was carried out in conjunction with Professor Mahart, wasn't it? So there was international experts who came and examined the education of solicitors in countries all around the world in order to kind of come up with this best practice model. It was done over a prolonged period of time, probably over a year. involved an expert working group in the Law Society, chaired by Judge Beard. So it's really kind of the cutting edge changes that have arisen from that report. It's something that the Law Society probably does historically, maybe every 10, 15 years. And they carry out a very significant review of education, and this is the latest one.
Just another question around that report. Did it make any mention or around online learning at all, or how that might work or develop out in the future?
There was a suggestion, and it is being implemented, that a member of staff be hired, specifically looking at kind of how we can use technology to advance learning. So that was one of the recommendations, I believe, Rory.
That's right, absolutely,
Yeah.
Ian. And going hand in hand with that, I suppose a great amount of change was introduced by the introduction of PPC hybrid, where there was a huge amount of focus on online learning, all lectures delivered on an online basis, and also post-pandemic now, even small group work taking place on an online basis. I suppose that speaks very powerfully to this group with the potential, because I know that that type of learning sometimes has facilitated taking on of trainees outside the strictly Dublin area, because it means that there's not always that requirement to relocate to Dublin for a substantial period. That found voice in the PPC hybrid, and that change, even under the new dispensation, will continue, even following, as I'm pains to say, even following the introduction of the new PPC, the Fused PPC, we will maintain the PPC hybrid in the fused format.
There's a question there around the hybrid courses, if you just want to have a little look on the chat there. For Ian, I have another question just around the small practice grant and how that relates to this traineeship program. And they seem like a very nice opportunity for small firms to potentially take somebody on.
So I'll answer both those questions. The 3rd of October is the closing date at the moment for the hybrid course starting in January. In saying that, we have accepted late applications over the last couple of years, but the 3rd of October, somebody's just asking about the closing date for the hybrid course starting in January.
Yeah. There's somebody making reference to the 1st of June there. Is that a deadline, or?
So the June is for the full-time PPC course, and then the 3rd of October for the next hybrid course, if you like, you know. So you mentioned the small practice training grant. Yeah, so the small practice training grant is a grant worth €25,000. It gives the trainee solicitor a €7,000 discount on PPC fees and €18,000 to the training firm to help, I suppose, support the training contract and help pay the trainee over the 2-year in-office training period. The closing date for this year's competition is the 10th of June. And there's 5 grants available this year. Entrants must consist of solicitors' practices of 5 solicitors or less. So that's 5, including, you know, principal, partners, associates, 5 or less. And the firm itself must be based outside of the cities of Cork, Galway, and Limerick, and the city and county of Dublin. So it's aimed at smaller practices in the towns of Ireland, really. To enter, you just have to have identified an FE1 candidate who will have passed the 8 FE1 exams by the 10th of June 2022. And you just have to set out a training proposal of 1,000 words or less. The application form and the rules for the scheme are available on the Law Society website. Once you're logged in as a solicitor, you can go to Solicitors, Hiring a Trainee, and you'll see the details of the grant itself there. And it's called a Small Practice Training Grant. So it's our 3rd year to run the competition. Last year, we got a good few entries from all around Ireland, which was really exciting. And, you know, we have 10 trainees already who've gotten the award in conjunction with their firms and are now training. And yes, the small practice grant applies to the hybrid course. So each year we might get maybe 2 on the full-time availing of the grant and 3 perhaps on the hybrid every year, you know.
That's a good question. Can 2 small firms come together and apply for the grant?
Yeah, I don't see why not, provided individually they consist of, 5 or less solicitors, and provided, that they can comply with that geographical rule as well. But it might be a great way of getting a trainee on board, at little cost and little risk, if you like, So yeah, I'd love to see an entry like that this year.
Very good. Very good. So just back to you, Rory, unless you have anything else to say, Ian, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just back to talking about the electives then. Do you want to just explain that a little bit more, how that might work, Rory?
Super, thanks so much, Justin. So the advanced electives, I suppose, are like a really exciting part of the new model of the training. I suppose, as in any training, there's that core element that has to be taught, and then what we really focused on is the possibility of sort of bespoke learning for the trainee, and that happens after the completion of the core area of the new PPC. So starting from in May, June time, there will be that suite of advanced electives being provided by the Law Society, and trainees will be required to complete 4 advanced electives. They can choose to do them with the Law Society, and the fee is €600 per advanced elective, and reductions apply if the trainee is taking all 4 advanced electives with the Law Society. And within the brochure that either has been circulated or will be circulated, you'll see that rather extensive list of advanced electives to be provided by the Law Society, and some real creative stuff in there. You've got the what you would expect, the standard, the employment law, the criminal litigation, but you've got some other sort of more creative advanced electives, I suppose, for the want of a better description, sort of the future of lawyering in the digital world, corporate social responsibility as an advanced elective. So again, really that focus on, creating a bespoke learning event for the trainees. And that's what the Law Society will be doing. But we also want to partner with other institutions, and those institutions will also be providing advanced electives outside that May to June time. And I suppose the key piece in that, is that if there is an element of choice for the trainees as regards to who they do advanced electives with and when they do advanced electives, the natural extension to that is that there is then an element of choice, or a variable as regards to when they return to the office. If they're not doing all the advanced electives in the May to June period, the chances are that they return to the office starting May. However, or if they are doing them in the May to June time, the return to office will be July time. So, it's an exciting part of the traineeship, but there are variables included within the advanced electives. And as I say, the full suite available in the brochure that we've published.
Very good. So we're just running into the last 2 minutes. So I know there's a question there about FE1 exam results. That's kind of, I'm not sure about that one. And maybe, Ian, is there a deadline for that small traineeship grant?
Yeah, so the small practice grant, the 10th of June is the deadline, 10th of June. In respect to the question regarding the FE1 results, it's a good question. Yeah, the question's asking, what's the situation if I sit the FE1s in autumn, and my results aren't out in time for that deadline? That won't cause any difficulties. Those results may come out after the 3rd of October. The individual can still apply, and they can even put in an application pending, the issuance of those last couple of results that they might be waiting on for individual papers. Any of the people over the last couple of years who were in that situation got on the course, provided they passed exams, of course. And even those who were waiting on a recheck from the autumn sittings still got on the course as well, if they were successful on a recheck. So, there's no difficulty with us processing those kind of last minute applications for those who are waiting on a couple of FE1 papers. So good question. And provided they pass, they get on the course. Yeah, that's the answer.
Very good. So I suppose we're just out of time, and in summary, Rory, just asking a question, like the main advantage of this is really for employers, isn't it? In that it gives them more foresight, or they know where their students are at.
I think that's absolutely, and I mean, thanks so much, Justin. I mean, I think and Ian alluded to this. It is a once in a generation change to the system of training, and I suppose there's logistical advantages in the fusing of the PPC1 and the PPC2, as there's certainty for firms as regards to the coming and going within offices, but also, I mean, but not to minimize the real profound changes as well from a pedagogical and content perspective as well, that speak to the needs of trainees and the profession to be at the cutting edge of the business world and the business of law as well. So, you know, it's a really exciting change to be part of.
That's great. Listen, thanks, Rory. Thanks, Ian, for joining us today. I'll be sending out a recording on Friday with a copy of the slides, a copy of the brochure, and maybe a copy of the traineeship grant as well to everybody. So thanks for joining us. Hopefully you'll join us next week. So long.